Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 302 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe.
My name is Summer Rain.
My name is Jordan Willis.
Oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining on today's episode of the podcast. She is a filmmaker and a game developer of the recent game Qualia. Please welcome to the show, Sydney, aka allsee. How you doing?
Hello, hi. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's great to have you here. We have you here, Sydney, because we are going to be talking all about your game, Qualia. It is a free game that you can play right now on Steam. It has completely taken over my mind in a lot of ways. Cannot wait to talk about this game with you, some of its themes and whatnot. Before we get into that, though, we've got lots of news. The controversies around the way that Nintendo has been launching the Switch 2 continue. We'll be talking about some of that stuff. There's still some pricing concerns in several countries. The tariffs that we discussed last episode have some updates, if you can believe it. Seems like the news is changing pretty much every 12 hours and much, much more. But before we get into all that stuff, how's everybody doing? You guys have a good week this past week?
Tired. This past weekend, we decided to go to Six Flags Fiesta Texas on Saturday, and then the Sherwood Renaissance Fair on Sunday. So it was a double dip of being outside in the not so hot Texas sun, but getting hot Texas sun. It's about like low 90s. So very sunny weekend, which was nice, but also like, oh, the summer sads are going to be here soon.
It portends what is to come. Absolutely.
Yeah. David, I'm so sad I missed you on Sunday. Like, I knew actually a decent amount of people who were there yesterday, and it's like a big, small fair, so I just lost in the shuffle.
That's true. The rumors are true. I was also at the Renaissance Festival, and we did not meet up, sadly. There was a bunch of people that I saw there randomly that I know, and then also like going on Instagram or whatever afterwards, it was like, oh, you were there? What the hell?
I did talk to one person today who told me that Saturday was it was record breaking for that particular fair. Like there was the most people that ever attended it in the history of the fair. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, pretty good time. Shout out to my buddy Baylor, a friend of the show, Baylor Estes, who lent me like a little Hobbit shawl and a little sword that I jerry-rigged to my pants and walked around with the entire time. So definitely helped to have the accoutrement. Summer, how about you? How was your week?
Yeah, I had a pretty busy week. I went and saw, if you have the chance to go see them, I highly recommend it. I saw Ninja Sex Party and Twerp. Never saw them before. Live, incredible live show that they put on. And then I went to Minneapolis for a couple of days for VGM Con. And I was super busy, but I had a really good time. Performed with a couple of groups and did a lot of jamming. Got to do just like a bunch of different performances and just hanging with really good people. Highly recommend.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I got to make it out to one of those video game music cons sometime.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, very cool. How about you, Sydney? Did you have a pretty good week?
Yeah, I haven't really been doing that much. I've been working on the DLC for Qualia and then playing a lot of Blueprints, which is taking up more time than I anticipated.
Can't wait to talk about that.
We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it.
It's great though. I'm very surprised and happy to see that game actually taking off because it feels like a genre that doesn't normally get a ton of recognition. So that's really great to me as a Myst fan, particularly. Wonderful. We're going to move on to a little bit of shout outs. As we talked about, already, we did an episode last week on the Trump tariffs. That's right. We got political last episode. Pretty great response to the episode. So thanks everybody who watched or listened to the episode and gave some comments. A couple of people that I wanted to shout out on YouTube, Hatsack Mike and Real Tomato both brought up the tariffs being paused and the fact that a lot of stuff had changed since we'd recorded the episode. We'll get to that here in just a second, but that does kind of just point out the fact that nobody really knows what they're doing with this entire situation. But it was very nice to have our guest on last week and have an actual economist explain to us some of what was going on. Swerskinator, friend of the show, also posted RIP to my dreams about Nintendo achievements. it does seem that Nintendo will not be adding achievements to their system. I know that would have been the one thing to get Swerskinator to actually subscribe to NSO. So sadly, it seems Nintendo will not be getting his money. And then also on the Discord, we had a bunch of great conversations. Shout out to Shade, who brought up a really good point about the kind of difference between the Switch 2 and 3DS launches. We were talking quite a bit about how, Nintendo dropped the price of the 3DS after it didn't sell very well at the beginning, wondering if that was possible here. I think a big difference here, as Shade pointed out, was that the Switch 2 seems to have quite a beefier games available on release, right? So that is definitely a really good point, and one that I had not really considered. I think the Switch 2 is launching with many, many games day one, so that'll be exciting to pick up. But thank you, everybody, for all the comments and sharing the show around. If you enjoy this show, please tell a friend about the show. Leave comments on this episode. The show is on YouTube. We've got a video version up there, so subscribe to our YouTube channel if you'd like to see our beautiful faces. Or, just leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, any of those things. We'd love to see you around there. And also, want to give a shout out to the Patreon. Thank you to all of our patron subscribers. And I think that's it. Share the show on Reddit. Talk to your friends. Word of mouth. I'm still getting the intro down. We're having a good time. Let's move on. We got lots of news and rumors to talk about this week before we get into the main topic. We're going to do that right now and just kind of talk about the tariff situation. As we now know it, and again, as of the recording now at 7:45 p.m. on Monday, April 14th, it does seem that there is a 90-day pause on a lot of the crazy sign that Trump had put out with all the different, tariff amounts that he apparently had cooked up on ChatGPT. It's kind of changed to, I think, a blanket 10% tariff across everything except for China, which has tariffs of 145%, I believe, is the last thing that we had heard. What do you guys think about this? What's your take on this? Does this change anything about what we talked about as far as Nintendo potentially raising the price? Do you think that they might eat into these tariffs on their end, or do you think they'll still pass them off to the customer?
I think they'll definitely eat it on their end. It's not their MO to really pass it on to the customer once they've already announced the price. They kind of put themselves in that corner with that price point. So I don't think they would ever raise it. I don't really historically think they've ever raised the price on a console after it's been announced. I could be wrong, but I don't think it's ever happened. Also, there are starting to be exceptions to the tariffs. So I know like computers or phones are going to be some of the items that will be have an exception on the tariff price point. So I don't know if that's going to include game consoles. It's really kind of unclear at this point.
I think hasn't it already been discussed that consoles are not included in that?
It's all gobbledygook to me, to be honest.
Absolutely. But I'll go ahead and disagree with Jordan then, because why would they have rescinded pre-orders? Literally, what other purpose was there in rescinding pre-orders if they weren't reassessing the price? I'm not saying that means they're going to raise it. I'm saying it's not out of the question.
Right. Yeah, it's been interesting seeing a lot of just normie news outlets talking about Switch pre-orders and stuff like that. I think, John Oliver just did a decent segment on the Switch 2 and its release. And it's been just funny seeing all these people that are not usually following Nintendo news learn that the president of Nintendo of America's name is Doug Bowser. It just takes everybody by surprise.
It makes you think that that's why he stayed out of the spotlight. You know,
he just didn't want to be bullied by like CNBC pundits or something. Yeah. Do you have any kind of takes on this, Sydney? What are your thoughts on the Switch launch?
Yeah, I actually think it's kind of interesting because I only have like a couple Canadian friends, but they're also getting impacted. And so I'm really curious what like that news cycle is like, basically knowing that it is Trump and America's fault that they're not going to be getting their Switches potentially for the same price or even the same time. Right.
Yeah, as of the recording now, pre-orders are not open still in the US, and the same is true in Canada. I think they're doing that so that Americans don't pre-order in Canada and cross the border and pick them up, I guess.
Right, which is it's fair in one sense, but also not fair in the other sense because that sucks both ways. But that's only here in North America that they haven't started yet, right? Because I think in Europe, and Asia, you can get the Switch 2 now, right? Or you can pre-order now, I mean.
That's correct. The pre-orders are live right now in the UK. And it's not just on the Nintendo website. It's also like Game and all these retailers and stuff like that have it going live. So yeah, so people are posting. I'm getting FOMO, like looking at it.
Yeah.
I know, like I'm definitely excited for this new system and hope to be able to get one on day one. But
you think we'll
call your British friends, I guess.
Yep.
You think?
yeah.
Do any of us have like a suspicion of when this will get resolved? Like, do you think this will get resolved after the Direct on Thursday for Mario Kart World?
Oh, that's actually not a bad theory.
Right? That's
you got to think at this point. They can't just keep waiting to see what this administration decides they're going to do next. They kind of have to make a decision. It would make sense to kind of lump all that within a news cycle, I suppose.
Makes you wonder what their, I guess internal, like what the coffers are looking like right now if they're deciding to put it off this long.
I think they might push it even up to close to when they're doing their own pre-orders, because I feel like that's more kind of what it's about, is they're kind of trying to assess, okay, how many do we have allotted for our pre-order system online versus how many can we give out to retailers? How many do we have in the warehouses right now? How many are sitting on boats? How many are halfway across the ocean? Like, I think they're really just kind of just crunching the numbers and trying to do that. I even thought it was just weird that the retailers were going to get first dibs on the pre-orders.
I agree. Yeah, it was always kind of strange.
Oh,
yeah.
see, I understood it because I think it was meant to be a last effort kind of thing.
Like if you can't get one at Best Buy, don't worry, we'll ship you one.
I mean, that's how I prefer it too, is I would prefer to get mine through Best Buy. But if I can't, it's nice knowing that I can get it through Nintendo. Well, that's all theoretical now, but
Best Buy is doing like a midnight launch for it. Actually, they haven't done one of those in forever.
I want to get it at midnight. I want to get it in person. I don't want to have to worry about it, being shipped somewhere. And
would you cosplay for the midnight launch of the Switch 2?
I don't know, because I don't know what I would cosplay. I don't really have time to put anything. I mean, I don't know.
Do the bird, the accordion bird.
It was always easy. Yeah. Oh, Cass.
Cass. Yeah.
Cass hasn't been here in a few years.
Okay, that's fine.
But I mean, like Mario, anything Mario, I guess would be fun. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I got to talk to my local Best Buy.
Bring Waluigi back.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to get Waluigi. Let's go ahead and talk about that. One of the things that is something that I'm sure Nintendo is considering right now is how many actual Switch units are already in the United States. And we talked about this a little bit last week. There have been rumors about shipping manifests and stuff like that. And it's hilarious to me that we've all become experts on the global economy and shipping manifests and stuff like that over the past week. But it does seem that, there are multiple millions potentially of Nintendo Switch 2s already in the US. Over 1 million, I think was the quote from Doug Bowser. I'm not sure who was interviewing him on this one where he talked about that, but most of the units that are being made in Vietnam are going to the US, and apparently Nintendo's been stockpiling quite a few of those. So you would think that if those are already here, those will not be affected by price, or at least that would be the dream. No price increase on those systems, but anybody have any thoughts on that?
It's just interesting to see also like all of these companies kind of, because Nintendo's not the only one where they're just kind of stockpiling in warehouses exponentially over the course of a few months just to try to like combat all these tariffs and stuff. But like, I really don't, like, 1 million doesn't seem like that many to me, especially considering how many units the original Switch has sold already. And I'm sure in the first year, I mean, I don't have the number in front of me, but I'm sure on launch day or launch week, it was much more than 1 million. I feel like they're going to burn through that stock very, very quickly. And I remember how hard it was to find a Switch the first go around. I just waited until like September, 6 months out. And finally, just once I saw one at a Target, I just bought it immediately because there was 3 left and I knew they'd be gone within the next few hours. So just snapped one up. So I don't know, man. It just doesn't seem like that many to me. It doesn't comfort me in the way that I think Doug Bowser thought it would. Though seeing Doug Bowser alive did bring me a good deal of comfort.
We love proof of life from Doug Bowser.
But see, I wonder too, though, isn't if I remember, there's like requirements for being able to pre-order it. Like you need to have been like a Nintendo online member, I think I don't remember what the duration was. And I wonder if that will affect just the number of people that will even be able to buy it, right? Because I mean, 1 million is not a lot, but I also wonder the amount of people that want a Switch 2 and the amount of people who can actually buy the Switch 2 might be very different.
Sure, yeah. And for what it's worth, I do think that those requirements were only if you're ordering direct from Nintendo, right? So that's like through their online store. So I think like somebody who is, got like, let's say like a parent who has like a kid who's getting to be the gaming age, wants to buy the new system. They don't have a system already. Like they'll be able to get one from retailers without that thing. But like, Nintendo back in 2017, they didn't have an online infrastructure to sell directly to the customer like they do now. So they're kind of trying to figure out like where their place is within all these retailers, I suppose. Yeah, that's a good point, Sydney. There's been a lot of talk about the whole point of these tariffs being that the idea is moving manufacturing to the United States. There has actually been, what was it? You've got it in here. I think Polygon did an article about how long it would actually take for Switch 2 production to move to the US. It's insanely long and it's not going to happen. And I think that that's something that this administration is like learning the hard way or they didn't think about beforehand, is that the global kind of trade system is not built around US manufacturing and never really has been. I don't know. Did you guys have a chance to read this article or look at it? Jordan, do you have any takeaways on this?
Yeah, they talked with a business economics professor. So shout out to Polygon for also getting an economist. That's cool. But yeah, it's just like
that's
really
how you
funny.
know we're real journalists. Yeah, we're doing the same shit as Polygon.
It's just funny to see all of us really learn a lot more about the globalized economy within the past week. It's like I've read a lot about it, but to see a lot of people I don't think would have any idea how things are actually made and make it to our country have not thought about it until these tariffs come up is like fascinating. Because I'm like, oh, y'all didn't know this is like a really dark system of paying people pennies across the ocean to like ship things here for our own convenience. Like it's not great. Anyway, the moving a whole manufacturing plant here like just doesn't make sense too, because I mean, a lot of these systems, and it talks about this a little bit, like pieces are made all over the world and then shipped to one factory to be assembled versus like, it's not like, oh, there's a Switch 2 factory where they make the microchips, the motherboards, the screens,
right?
They don't just make everything in one place. It's not like that. Like everything is shipped to one manufacturing facility and then it's like put together. So like, I think people don't really process that's how this all works, and just like introducing tariffs into that, it just gets really messy.
Sure. I feel like even making the manufacturing centers like in the US would require tons of overseas materials and stuff like that in and of itself, not even counting, the time, the people that are willing to work those kinds of jobs, et cetera. So it's a whole can of worms. We'll continue to cover this as it evolves. I don't know. Maybe we'll just fully pivot to a fully political podcast by the end of this, but we'll have to see how that goes. Let's go ahead and move on. And I'm sure we'll be out of fucking Nintendo news here pretty soon, but it does seem that there are more pricing controversies that have been going on online. I'd love to get your guys' overall feeling on some of the pricing, because I think that there's a lot of different opinions here, and a lot of the negativity is just the loudest that I'm seeing right now online, but there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of things to talk about. So just as a quick rundown, you guys can pick any of these to talk about you want. Reggie Fils-Aimé went live on social media, kind of throwing some shade on current Nintendo, talking about how Wii Sports was a pack-in title and it did incredible numbers in the US. Obviously, I think he's referring to Welcome Tour not being a pack-in there. It was revealed that the Breath of the Wild Nintendo Switch 2 edition does not have the DLC included. That means if you buy the full game plus the upgrade plus the DLC, that's $90. Something to talk about there. Prices in Scandinavia, that's Norway, Sweden, Netherlands, stuff like that, for the Switch 2 are massively hiked because of some retailer shenanigans around there, making it really hard for people in that region to actually pick up a Switch 2. And Doug Bowser had a little bit of a gaffe as well, basically kind of repeating that Don Matrick thing with the Xbox One, where he was saying basically that if you can't afford a Switch 2, then the Switch 1 is right there for you, right? As more of a budget option. I think some people took that the wrong way, although it seemed to me to be a little bit more of a gaffe than anything else. But any of those stand out to any of you guys for points of discussion?
I think the Doug Bowser thing is, again, more evidence that there's a reason why he's not talking to people typically, or he just he hasn't had a lot of press experience. Because I hear that and I'm like, I think what they're trying to say is that they're not stopping support for the original Switch and that they plan to continue to make the original Switch. But I can absolutely understand why it looks like a PR blunder and it comes across as, oh, the poors can't afford the newest model of something. But I don't know, that might be more of a capitalist symptom of that we feel that way, that a company themselves is saying, no, you don't have to buy the newest thing that we're making. Because of course you don't have to buy the newest thing that we're making. Yeah. Oh man, that's.
I agree with that. I think realistically, sure. Again, the larger issue of well, it shouldn't be that expensive. That's a different problem versus, okay, well, you don't need to buy it though. There's actually nothing wrong with the original Switch. It's perfectly fine. They are still going to support it. There's tons of games that you can play on it. It's not an issue. And I think it is something where it is this internalized, well, no, but I need the new one. People don't want to feel like they can't afford the new thing. When in reality, you maybe can't, and that's okay. Don't buy it. Buy it later. You don't need it day one,
A lot of, and because I think a lot of other tech companies have maybe made us feel that way. Sony, Xbox, Apple, or I should say Microsoft, really do lay on the pressure of this is the brand new thing and you need it. And we're going to stop supporting everything else as soon as we get this new thing out. So it's actually kind of, maybe I'm giving Doug Bowser more credit than he's due because no, president of a company really needs credit, but
he's certainly not the kind of, he doesn't have the same kind of riz that Reggie Fils-Aimé had. You know what I mean? I feel like but it's also different times.
I don't think he's that. Yeah. I don't think he's without riz completely, but he's not Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Yeah. Riz King Doug Bowser, absolutely. So the Reggie Fils-Aimé thing is pretty funny to me. It does seem like he's throwing a little shade. I feel like Reggie right now definitely feels like, oh man, I left a little too early right now. Because you could see him kind of itching from the sidelines to be like, oh, put me back in, coach. But that definitely was a whole different era with Iwata and Reggie kind of running things across the globe. But Jordan, did any of these stick out to you?
Yeah, I think the Breath of the Wild or Nintendo Switch 2 edition not having the DLC included is kind of a big misstep. If you're buying the game and then having to pay the premium on top feels kind of gross. I think the only takeaway is that they really want you to subscribe to NSO, so you get that included in your package. And I feel like it might even behoove them to kind of if you buy the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Breath of the Wild, you get 3 months free of NSO or something as a peace offering. And then once you're hooked, you have to subscribe. Kind of the model of when I bought a new laptop, it gave me 3 months free of Apple TV, 3 months free of Apple Music. And it's to try to get you hooked on these things and then kind of bleed you dry slowly but surely. Wow, I'm being really...
No, it's good. Today. Every time I order a banh mi from the place that's by my apartment and I order it online, it's here's 3 free months of Paramount Plus. I'm like, wait, how many times are you guys going to give me that?
Do they stack or is it one time?
I have no idea. I've been mooching off my friend's Paramount Plus this whole time, so I have no need for it. No, but yeah, that is a good point. And I'm not trying to forgive this practice, but it's how many people that own a Switch 2 or that are trying to get a Switch 2 don't already have Breath of the Wild. It's
that's if people are upset about not being able to buy the Switch 2 when there's been, years of the Switch 1, are those the same people who are really upset that they also didn't buy Breath of the Wild when it came out and now they're trying to either buy it again or they never bought it? It's a weird you can't have both, I guess.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And I think from Nintendo's perspective, they're probably like, well, there's probably way more people that don't own the DLC. And then they're going to be getting the game for free, and they probably already are a subscriber, so they'll be getting that for free. So we can get $20 out of them, you know what I mean, for the DLC if they want the full experience. I feel like that's probably where it's coming from, which I do think is kind of scummy. I think it's like, I wish Nintendo would follow, because it feels like this era of Nintendo is starting to finally follow the rest of the industry. And as far as like they're making a really powerful system and they're bringing online voice chat and stuff into their console or whatever. But it seems like they didn't get the memo that whenever a game is re-released, it has all the content on, on the cartridge, you know? And so I think that that's something that they probably could catch up on. But I think this is definitely another instance of physical game perverts complaining that they don't have everything right there on the cart.
You just made me think of like, well, you know, like you can buy a used copy off Craigslist or Marketplace, or, you know, there's like a lot of sales or deals to be had on used copies of this game already out for the Nintendo Switch like one. So that's how you save the money. Like if you're really that worried about it, you're pressed, you just buy a used copy and then buy the DLC digitally. Like I didn't even think like, yeah, that's probably also what they're trying to get at as well, you know?
Yeah.
But weirdly enough too is like, if that's something where people are really upset, they're like, oh, well, I want like a sealed copy for myself. I'm like, okay, well, you would have gotten that when it came out. Like it's it's a weird thing to be upset about. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll have to see what happens. I have a feeling that Nintendo will kind of chill on some of this. You know, you have to think that like this launch and the PR around it has not been going the way that they assumed that it would. We've seen some of this with PS5. I think some people were pissed off about the price of the PS5 when it came out. PlayStation was on top of the world and very confident when they released that console as well. You know, it's always the people that have the market, you know, basically own most of the market, you know, can then see, you know, they're pushing the buttons as to seeing what they can get away with, right? So we'll just have to see kind of how this all shakes out whenever it comes out, but interesting to talk about. Let's move on from Nintendo Switch 2. Nintendo Switch Online. There have been 3 new games added to the Sega Genesis. I guess they'll still be calling that Nintendo Switch Online. They can't really call that Nintendo Classics, like they're rebranding all of the other NSO channels. But 3 games have been added to the oft forgotten about Sega Genesis app on your Switch. That being Streets of Rage, Super Thunderblade, and eSWAT, City Under Siege. These are very Sega Genesis era games here. Anybody play any of these? Anybody still playing the Genesis app on their Switch?
No.
I know Streets of Rage is popular.
Yeah.
And that's great. What about you, Sydney? Are you like a beat 'em up fan? Are you a fan of any of these shooters or anything like that?
No, I like really never played any Nintendo games as a kid. I had a Nintendo 64 and then I had a Game Boy Color, specifically the Pokemon Yellow one with the yellow cartridge. I think I was talking to somebody about this today, and I think that may have been my like earliest game, or like that would have been like in the era of like my earliest game.
Sure.
But I just like skipped everything else. I like never really played any of I like didn't play any Mario games. The first Zelda I played was Breath of the Wild.
Hell yeah.
I just have like huge gaps for all of this stuff. But also, no beat 'em ups at all, no shooters. No roguelikes, except for Blueprints. But
we'll be dropping little Blueprints hints throughout the course of this episode. But I don't know. That's exciting. I'm glad to see proof of life for the Genesis app, right? So good for them. I'm glad to see they're still adding stuff to it. We'll see what they end up calling that thing on the new system. Next news has been something going around about the NSO GameCube controller that will be launching with the Switch 2. As we all know, Switch 2 is getting GameCube support for Nintendo Switch Online within the Nintendo Classics banner. And it's come out that the GameCube controller won't be fully compatible with games outside of the app, I think was the wording that was said. This has led to a lot of misinformation, as we've been seeing a ton of with this rollout of all the Switch 2 PR stuff. As we've said, I think that Nintendo hasn't really been super upfront with everything, which causes a lot of speculation, causes a lot of people saying things to get clicks. But do you know much about this, Jordan?
Yeah,
I can't imagine that they're going to, if it's got a ZL button added onto it, I imagine it's going to work with games outside of NSO.
So their previous controllers have worked with games outside of the app itself, but the problem usually ends up being that there's not enough buttons on those controllers to be like viable replacements for the regular Nintendo Switch controller. GameCube, though, has all of the buttons or most of the buttons. So I have a feeling they are just covering their base by saying it won't work. Right. And then when it does work, people will be pleasantly surprised. And I really don't think we'll truly know until we have one of these like in our hands if it will or will not work. But history has said that these controllers do work outside of the app. So they're just being, like you were saying, just really coy about the wording of this type of thing. So personally, I think it probably will work outside of the app, but I'm not willing to die on that hill. And I probably won't even buy one. I haven't bought one yet.
I'd be shocked if it didn't work because I literally have a friend who uses a plug-in GameCube controller to play Mario Kart every time he comes over.
Yeah. I mean, I've got this guy right here, which is like a GameCube controller that I modded to be wireless that works with my Switch. I cannot see every other classic controller they've had. Works.
And this one has the buttons.
I think probably what they're talking about is clicking in sticks, because I have heard that the new GameCube controller does not have click in sticks. Like it is straight up, other than the buttons they add on the top, which includes the new C button and stuff like that, will not have clickable sticks, which is funny because this modded one that I made using an 8-bit kit does.
Weird.
Clickable sticks, as you can hear. So I guess I'll be using this.
That's so
but no,
weird.
I mean, I'm looking forward to using the GameCube controller and other stuff. If I do end up getting one, games like Super Monkey Ball, like the new Super Monkey Ball, are really fun to play, especially when you have like an octagonal gate where you can like hold certain directions easier. So yeah, that's something that I'm looking forward to. And let's chill on the fake news, everybody. I think we've had a little bit too much of that lately. Last thing we want to talk about is maybe a chance for us to give a little speculation. This week, if you're listening to this episode when it comes out, just 2 days from now, Nintendo will be doing a brand new Direct, mainly featuring, or exclusively featuring, I would think, Mario Kart World, the launch game that will be coming out with the system. I'm excited for this. I think that there's clearly things that they've been holding back about this game. If they're doing a whole Direct, you don't think that they've shown everything up to this point. You guys have any speculation on what we might see in this Direct, and are you excited for it?
Do we know how long it's supposed to be?
I don't think so.
Okay. Show me at least one more outfit for Pauline. That's what I want.
That's all you need to finally be sold on the new system.
I'm already maybe show us one more mode, because I'm getting the sense that we're going to have a few more modes to this game. That's something that they seem to be really keying into with this, is that it's not just racing, and that all these other modes are going to have more support than like the battle modes have previously, right? Like, yeah, battles were technically in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but they really didn't have a lot of support. And I don't think I had launched that in, at least a decade. So, just really curious about all the different modes.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what other, I feel like just in my gut, there's some sort of single player mode that uses the open world map that we don't know of yet. Like, because we've gotten the Grand Prix and the knockout mode, which are like the traditional everyday, what you would expect from a Mario Kart. But like so far, what we've seen from the open worlds is you can kind of just drive around in it, and you can drive around in it with your friends. And I feel like there's got to be something else. Like the fact that they even call it Mario Kart World, I don't want to take this from you, David, so I'm going to pass it off. You had some interesting speculation on like just the phrasing of Mario Kart World.
Yeah, well, I think, I guess my speculation would be more single player content. And I think like a single player campaign of some sort, Diddy Kong Racing-esque single player campaign. I think people have been wanting that from the franchise for a long time. The way that the world is set up really allows for it, I think, which is great. And also my theory is kind of that we haven't seen the Koopalings as racers in this. And they've got like 50 racers or something. They've got the dudes from Pianta Beach driving around in cars from Mario Sunshine. So it's odd that like Lemmy and Iggy and Morton and all those guys are not playable characters in here. I think that they're going to be bosses in a single player campaign, which maybe explains why they haven't been shown so far. But yeah, we'll see. That's obviously what I would want most out of this, but any kind of new functionality or stuff that you can do in the open world as you're going around, so it's not just kind of a big open landscape, I think would be really nice to see. But what about you, Sydney? Are you excited for Mario Kart World? Are you going to be watching this direct?
I am so bad at Mario Kart. I'm like, so I don't even play Smash, but like, you know how like the people who play Kirby and Smash are like a certain type of gamer?
Oh, no.
That's me. That's me.
Yeah.
So I'm not even like very good at racing. I'm lucky if I beat the actual like computer AI ones versus my friends. Don't even get me started.
Yeah. Well, maybe there'll be more for you to do just driving around randomly and
But see, I have to wonder though, like what, like to me, not being like a big Mario Kart fan, that doesn't sound very appealing. So like why, like what do I get out of just like driving around by myself looking at stuff, right? Maybe there's something interesting there, but
They give you money. They give you your money back as you play. That's why it's $80. Yeah. You get cash prizes. Yeah, that'd be nice. No, but that's a good point. It's like the Mario Kart games are like huge. Obviously, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is like one of the biggest selling games of all time. You know, what more worlds are there for them to conquer, right? So I think coming up with gameplay loops that aren't just straight up like, here's a race, you know, here's a 3-lap race, I think is probably something they're looking at to, you know, increase the audience of that game. But well, I think that's going to do it for our news section. Has some nice little bit of speculation there. We'll be talking obviously a lot more about the Mario Kart World Direct next week, but I think this is a good opportunity for us to take a little break, and we will be moving on to the main topic of this episode, which is Qualia with developer allsee right after this break. And we're back from the break. Congratulations. We are back here to talk main topic here with Sydney from, and remind me of the name of your game development company. Is it CMY2K? Is that correct?
yeah, CMY2K.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Sydney from CMY2K, we are going to be talking all about your recent game, Qualia. Very excited. This is a very fun game, a very thought-provoking game. I can't wait to get into all of it and kind of some of the themes around artificial intelligence, the future of technology and whatnot. But before we get into all that and we talk about the game, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Sydney?
Yeah. So this is my first game. I was a solo dev on it. I come from the film industry. I worked in post-production, editing, color grading for like, I don't know, 10 years. Then the pandemic kind of shuffled everything up. And since then I was doing a bunch of different things all the time. And it wasn't until this past summer, like June of 2024, that I really decided, okay, what would happen if I did make a game? Because I used to make my own little short films all the time. And I kind of figured, okay, well, writing is a very easy transferable skill. Can I adapt my understanding of what writing is to change it from a screenplay to a branching narrative? The answer is yes. And I spent a lot of time during the pandemic and after the pandemic streaming games because I was a gamer as a kid, but not, I guess, in the way that a lot of other people are. Like I mentioned, I didn't really play a lot of Nintendo games. So I did play tons of games, but not the normal ones that people would play. And so when I started streaming, I was learning about all these different weird indie horror games that I had never heard of. Some of them were new, some of them were really old. You know, I played You May Nikki for the first time. And it was something where I was like, okay, this is not only more interesting and inspiring for me now than a lot of what the film industry is doing, it also opened up like a completely different world in terms of like what you actually can do with a story. And so it was that plus wanting to do a thing again and feel more creatively, I don't know, a release to get it out. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to make a game. Here we go. And here we are.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. I'm always very fascinated by because I'm a filmmaker myself and also work in editing. You know, as someone who has been a gamer my whole life, it does seem like that there's like a barrier to entry of sort of that you have to cross in order to get into game development. I've always kind of wanted to do it, but I also just like don't want to learn how to code, which is mainly, I think, my main problem.
That was my fear. I mean, a lot of what held me back was like, well, I'm not a programmer. I'm not like a math brain. I'm not going to be able to learn how to use Unity. And then after eventually chatting with a bunch of other solo game devs, they're like, well, no, you don't actually have to do any of that. Like, sure, if you want to be a solo dev and use Unity, you have to do that. But also you could just be a writer on somebody else's game, or you can use any one of these other engines that exist. And I'm like, oh, shit, you're right. I didn't realize that.
That's right. Well, that's probably a pretty good way for us to kind of start talking about the game because, the game, I think, if I understand correctly, was built mostly using HTML, correct? This is a text-based game, right? Yeah,
so it's in Twine, which is all HTML, CSS, and Java, which I didn't really touch too much Java because I don't know it, but there's a little bit there.
Gotcha. And can you explain a little bit what Qualia is actually about?
Yeah, so there's like a couple layers of like what it is about. The most prevalent layer is... Well, I guess, do you want me to talk about the events of the game or like themes and analysis?
Sure. Let's start with like the gameplay, like what kind of game it is, what people can expect when they are picking it up.
Cool. So it is essentially, a lot of people are probably familiar with the Turing test where there's two participants and their responses to a question kind of will help people determine if they are artificial or human. This is similar, except that you're the judge instead of one of the participants. So you will be looking at two anonymous participants' answers to a question and then ranking those answers based on whether you think they are human or artificial. And then that's like the question portion. Once that ends, depending on your performance in the test, you get one of 6 different endings.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot more there as you kind of explore the game and as you go through it. This is one where, I haven't played like a ton of like visual novel games, or I don't know if you would really classify this as a visual novel, or how would you like
Steam does, so sure. Although Steam doesn't categorize it as a horror game. They think, oh yeah, this is a visual novel.
But you do.
But it's not a horror game.
You would call this a horror game.
I think it's an existential horror game. And so many people who play it are like, this is fucked up. This is a horror game. And I'm like, okay, well, let's convince Steam.
Yeah, this is a call to action. Everybody, please open up a Steam account. Write to their community managers about this. But Jordan, you played this game as well, right? What were some of your experiences playing this game?
Yeah, this game tapped into... So I really love the game called Hypnospace Outlaw. And this really tapped into that same area of my brain of having grown up with the internet from AOL days and like going online and taking like a personality test or of some sort for whatever result. And then also taking the same personality test multiple times until I got the result that I wanted, which is like exactly how this game felt, because you're intended to play it to get, you can get the one ending, but it's like when you get the one, you're like, well, I got to know what the other ones are. And it kind of taps into that same part of my brain. So I really enjoyed that. I was just like, man, this is like really, not something I had quite seen in too many video games outside of like a Hypnospace Outlaw. So I really enjoyed that. And I get the visual novel classification, but over the course of like by the second or third ending, I was like, no, this is a horror game. This is terrifying. And I love all the little like secrets hidden in it. I found a secret message written in binary, which I then opened a binary translator just to make sure. I was like, oh, okay, this is actually a message. And I was like, oh, this is... Anyway, so there's like lots of nice little secrets in there. But yeah, I would say it's like that's what it's like. It reminds me of being like 12 on the internet, in Internet Explorer, taking a personality test over and over again until I get the results that I want.
That's hilarious. It reminds me of, and I'm kind of only realizing this hearing you talk about it. It reminds me of like games I would play on like my TI-83 calculator in like high school. You know what I mean? Like games that are like either made by your friends or like came in a pack, like, stuff that was like text-based, like stuff that was very much you could play it through and kind of see everything there is to do on one path, but the joy in the game is going back in and kind of like seeing all the different permutations of the different choices that you could have made. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and it kind of makes me want to whip out my old TI-83 again.
Are they hitting any notes like about like, is there a truth to what they're sensing as inspiration for this?
Definitely the like quiz for sure, because I was like a Neopets kid, and that's where I learned HTML and CSS, which it's been that long since I used it. And I did spend a lot of time on the internet as a kid, like kind of just being out there and exploring and like talking to people. And this was like early days of like catfishing too. So like there's a lot of like, do you actually know who you're talking to online? Like, I'm a kid. Am I talking to another kid? Nobody knows.
Right.
It wasn't a chatbot back then, but it probably wasn't a kid. And so I think that, but also like the personality quizzes and wanting to like repeat something until you get a desired result is very accurate. The calculator, probably, yes. I feel like I remember playing those games, but I don't remember any of them specifically. Because I did have that calculator. We had to. The whatever TI-83 or something. I had that.
Yeah. I had the silver edition, baby.
Yeah.
That's something I really loved about the game as well was I feel like there are parts of the game and I guess maybe we should also probably say, because I kind of want to get into a bit of the game. And
we can have spoilers. I mean,
Yeah. I think it's like, maybe this is your warning right now. I would say, like, if you want to play this game, I will say this is a very short experience, and I'd like to get into some of what your thought process was in making a game that is kind of like this little. We had a developer on once who talked about making snack games, and this definitely feels like one of those to me in a way. I would recommend go check out this game, play it, at least play through one of the endings. It'll take you about how long would you say to finish the game, Sydney?
People have been wildly different. I would say full game, like if you're streaming and talking to people, I've seen on average like 90 minutes. But some people take hours, and then I've seen some people who are like not streaming and they just play it by themselves, or like 30 minutes to get all 6. So
right.
If you are slow reading, probably a little bit longer. If you spend a lot of time thinking about the questions and answering them yourself, probably a little longer. If you kind of like whiz through it, then I don't know. I say 5 to 10 minutes for one ending, but that is a lie, and I made that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of, I was when I streamed this game and you were in the chat, and that was such a delightful thing to be able to participate in. I'd not really done that before, where it was kind of like a one-on-one experience. That was very fun. But yeah, either way, the game is free on Steam. Go check it out if you're worried about spoilers. It's also very much a game that you experience, so I think hearing some of this stuff is probably not going to ruin too much of the experience. But I think all of that said, we've got the disclaimer out of the way. Something that I loved about this game was that I feel like a lot of the crux of the conceit of this Turing test that you're playing through in the game is very much like the setup for the real juice of the actual story and what's happening here, right? And I think what was funny for me and what took me a really long time on like my first ending that I hit in the game is that I was like really being like, oh, which one of these motherfuckers is real? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like really trying to like look at like, okay, well, there's capitalization in this one, and they use kind of turns of phrase in this other, but then sometimes they feel the opposite way. And so it's kind of you spend a long time like actually trying to do this real Turing test, but then it's as the game progresses, you realize there's something much deeper in it, and that a lot of these questions at the beginning are not really as important as they seem. Can you give me a little bit of what your thought process was in kind of drafting the story, like from a writing perspective, like knowing that was kind of not your end game of the story you're trying to tell? Like, what was some of that like? So
interestingly enough, the very first draft of the game is really similar to the current like Alan ending, except it didn't have any fun styling. It was just like black with white text because that's how Twine spits it out.
Right.
But a lot of that copy and a lot of the questions were exactly the same as they are now. And it was something where I did that, and then I showed a game dev friend and I was like, okay, is this a game worth making? And he was like, yes, this is cool. Keep going. And so then I did. And then I was like, okay, I'll add the 2 other endings. And then you either do the win condition or the lose condition or the Allen condition. And then I figured out how to do like the ability to like pull random questions. So I added some more questions. But But from there, it was sort of like, okay, it ends with you finding out that you're Alan. And like, that's it. That's like your kind of like twist ending. And then I did a bunch of play testing, and a lot of what people said, they all thought, this is great, I want more. That was like the number one note that I got in playtesting. And I was like, okay, this is a really hard but not bad problem to have, where it's like, everyone likes it. There's no bugs. There's nothing wrong. But everyone is like, okay, I spent like a couple minutes playing this game. I need a lot more. And I'm like, okay, shit, I got to turn this basically from like, in my brain, it's like I made a short film and now everyone's like, okay, make a feature. Like, right. Okay, so I got to make it longer. And this was a really good learning experience coming from film to gaming, is that longer doesn't necessarily mean like wider. It can also mean taller. So in the sense that like, because the game, that's not a good, but you know what I mean?
Going,
so,
keep going.
So it's the fact that it's because it's a game with multiple endings, I don't need to make one of the ending or any of the specific endings longer. I can give people more lore on the different endings. So it's less of like, okay, I'm going to do one loop and be satisfied with that, and more of kind of like the snack thing that the friend you mentioned. You have the same amount of time that you spend on the endings, but because they're so short, you're more incentivized to go back in and try something different. And then in that other ending, you get more information. And so it's sort of, and I'm actually not a huge visual novel player, mostly because they all kind of have some of the components that I was trying to avoid. Not that they're bad, just that because I'm not a visual novel player, I figured, okay, if I made a visual novel, how would I make it in a way that I would want to play it?
Right.
Which is maybe a good idea, because visual novels are like a really specific genre and like not everyone wants to play them. So I was like, okay, how do I make a game that is a visual novel that doesn't feel like a visual novel? Where there are multiple endings, but each ending is canon because it's a loop. Like they all exist. It's not like you do one ending and then you have an ending and then you go back and you like, well, in a parallel universe, we do a completely different ending. Each of the endings is, and you can do them in any order, so it doesn't matter, but each of the endings is then leading into the next loop. So it really is like a spiral, Sam Lake style. It's not a loop, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's really cool. And I imagine that's like both very freeing as a writer, especially when you're coming from film, where it's like, okay, here's how it starts and here's where it ends, and this is the linear progression of the story, right? And like all of a sudden, I feel like there's so much you can do in terms of like, oh, here's where I put certain bits of information in, and here's like the different interesting ways that people can experience the story. But is that also kind of like daunting, like coming from film where you're more used to writing the other way? Or like, did you find it freeing, I guess?
No, I mean, yes and no. I think when I did do a lot of writing, like screenplays, I tend to be like very descriptive. And it was always a note that I would get where it's like, you shouldn't be this descriptive in your writing. That's for the director to figure out. And I'm like, I'm going to direct it. I can do whatever I want. But I like, there's a lot of like meat in the like directions and the stuff that is in that you wouldn't normally have that much stuff. And so it was nice to be able to kind of fit that in finally in a way that was like, okay, I can actually put all of this there, and I can put all of this detail everywhere, and I can have like one ending that is my final ending and then fill in other endings in between. And I don't need to write it, chronologically. I don't need to write it where I know what this ending is going to be, but I don't know what the middle is. There are just so many different ways that I could approach it that it was actually, it was quite nice. And I think what's interesting too is like, in every single like place that I could, I like hid lore, where it was like, I'm in a game where you'd be walking around and like inspecting documents on tables in the Intellica building. I'm going to give you like a lore thing, right? Like if you pick up a document, like a collectible, I'm going to give you like a fake collectible where it's like, oh, you happen to stumble into this link. Let me give you a scrap of paper that's written by a mad scientist, right? Like that kind of vibe.
Yeah, that's another like very Sam Lake thing, like you were talking about, like Control. I loved, I haven't always like loved reading all the little lore bits in every game, but in that game I was just like, every single thing is like amazing.
I always try. I mean, yes, I proudly read every single document in Control.
Yeah.
But I try. I think they're good if they give you information. If it's stuff that like kind of doesn't matter, or it feels like it's not relevant, it's less incentivizing if I miss something to like go back for it. But I think because like the Remedy connected universe is so in depth and there is so much going on that are like little details, you're like, oh, I absolutely want to see what this stuff is. And I tried to kind of have that feeling where people wanted to know what these things were. So they wanted to click around and explore.
Yeah. And I think beyond just the connected universe too, it's also like vibe and setting and tone. And I think it's something that Qualia does really, really well. You know, I think we haven't really talked about that so far, but it's like the whole kind of interface of the game is sort of this very old school kind of retro monitor looking thing. It reminds me a bit of Severance, which is another show that reminds me of Control. You know, there's like very much some like similar things there, but it's not like, I think it's that sort of the world that you're in and the fact that stuff is obviously being withheld. And there are, you know, things that are, you know, like in Control, it's like stuff is like blacked out or redacted. And that makes you more and more curious about what's there. I think that's something that you did really well in this game, was like the withholding of information, only telling you what you need to know. So it kind of like builds this yearning to learn more about the environment that you're in. And so I thought that was something that you did really, really well with Qualia.
Thank you. Well, yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because like, once you get through at least the Alan ending, you kind of learn the player character that you are and why the information that is presented to you is presented both in that manner and in that level of detail. Because once you passed, like it in the beginning, there's like a moment where you can trust, like, okay, this is me, the dev, talking, and then you do the CAPTCHA. And then after that is essentially every single thing is unreliable because it's in the voice of Intellica. And so every single bit of information that you get is deliberately given in that way because it's presented where Intellica is always in the best light, which is something that you only know once you're Alan a couple times too, and you're learning more about why this is even happening in the first place.
That's just like what I really enjoyed is like, once I realized, oh, I am not me, I am Alan, and that is the character I am in this game. It like really reframed how I interacted with the game, because I was like, oh, this is all like I've done this X amount of times, millions of times, billions of times maybe, but like I need to figure out how do I break this cycle. And then the game becomes different because it's not about like the actual test itself that you're doing. It comes about like, okay, how do I break this cycle? How do I prove that I'm real? And then that's when it starts getting just really existentially heavy. We're like, oh shit, am I a real person? Or am I Alan now? Like, I don't even know. So
how far does I think therefore I am actually take us? Yeah.
Yeah. And it just really kind of rocked my world last night when I was playing it. I was like, I can't go to bed now. Am I even human? Are we still in a simulation? What does it mean? I don't even know. Whatever.
It's about a 50-50 shot, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think at this point it's about a 50-50, but it made me curious, like, are these questions that you kind of have always really thought about, or is this something more response to the more recent proliferation of AI becoming more consumer accessible, or like where did this kind of idea start to take shape?
I think so. The AI thing, you know, if you read the binary, it goes a little bit into my kind of thoughts on AI in general. I always liked fictional AI as a kid. And so that kind of reshaping and like mutation of what we have now compared to what I had always dreamed of as a kid is very different. And so that kind of was something that like I've always kind of thought about that in terms of the existential questions. Yeah, I guess I did a lot of when I was in high school. I was in IB, and you get to like pick certain specializations in terms of like your classes. And I always just went really hard into psychology. And we have like this one class called Theory of Knowledge, where you just like learn a lot about like, it's not about thinking. It's like, what is thinking? Like, what does it mean when you think, and why are you thinking those things? And I just kind of really always, I guess, think like that. It's funny because to me, it's not like existential. Like I can think about these questions and you can't answer them, right? Like they're all thought experiments and they don't have answers. But I think that's also okay. And everyone's answer will be a little bit different. And that's kind of why the game is called Qualia, because everyone's experiences are going to be different of the same thing. Everyone has their own unique perspectives on what it means to be a person and be alive. And I think that's interesting. And I think more importantly, people don't think about that often. Or if they do, maybe they don't communicate it often with other people. And so kind of getting people to think about that a little bit or talk about it with other people or maybe think about it for the first time was something that I thought would be kind of a cool experiment almost in the game. Because in a way, I'm not running an Intellica study, but I am running something where I'm giving people a topic and I'm very curious what they're going to think about that topic. Because I'm not giving them a right or wrong answer. The game doesn't actually tell you what to think, but it gets you to start thinking. And then whatever your end result of having thought that will be interesting and will be different than everyone else's experience in that collective thinking. I guess if I explained that correctly.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, is it like set? Because I imagine that you're probably watching streams of people playing the game, and I know you watch mine. Is that been a satisfying thing to like see somebody complete the game and then kind of like speak out loud on what some of their thoughts are and like what it brings up?
Yeah, it's been great because, well, so first of all, I will say that when I set out to make this and when I kind of finished it, my goal was like, boy, I hope 5 people who I don't know play this game.
Yeah.
And it'd be great if they like it, but that's, extra credit.
Right.
And being able to like see the amount of people who've played it and enjoyed it and kind of all shared in a unique but similar emotional experience has been absolutely incredible. But it is really interesting to watch people play it. And I do try to find as many streams as I can, just because it is like a relatively short game, so I can watch their stream if there's a thought of it or if they're live streaming.
Right.
And it's, it's always really interesting to see in the beginning the different things that people look out for the 2 participants. Because every person who plays, mostly every person, is very, very confident in their initial thought, but they're very different. So most people are like, okay, participant 1 is totally the AI because of these reasons. And then I'll watch another person. They're like, well, it's obviously participant 2 for these reasons. So it's interesting to know that despite neither of them being correct, they're both so confident and so different from each other. And I guess technically they combined, they're both correct because yes, but also like an example, in one of the early iterations of the game with the 2 participant responses, they were a lot harder to identify for people between like which one could have been an AI. And then I added later on because I wanted it to feel kind of more like rewarding and almost a bit easier in a way, even though it's deceptive, the different punctuation, because I didn't have that at first. And so adding that in is a bit of a red herring, but it does sometimes give people something to latch onto. And so people will sometimes be like, oh, well, there's punctuation. That's obviously an AI, because people don't use that in real life. But then people will sometimes ignore that and think, well, that is the smarter answer, so that must be the human, because AI is dumb. But then even different people are like, well, humans are dumb and AI is smart, so it must be the smart answer. Little things that people are just like picking up.
It kind of like shows the fundamental problem with the Turing test in general, right? Because it's like, because you could program an AI to pass a Turing test. It's like you like do all these things that a human can do in order to throw off someone who's judging this, right? That's the kind of like spiral that I was going in as I was playing the game. It's like, okay, well, it's this, but then it could be this, and it could be this, and it was just like, oh man, I've just got to pick one of these,
Yeah, and sometimes people do that too, where they'll like sit on a question, and that's why sometimes people take 90 minutes, because they'll sit on a question for maybe 5 minutes just on one question and be like paralyzed with indecision. And then eventually, okay, well, I don't know, I'll guess this one, right? And it's like, well, it's not a guess. It's what do you think?
Right. In a text-based game, that's the equivalent of staring at all the little stuff on the wall as you're walking around in the first-person shooter. Yeah, 100%. I loved so many of the themes of this game, and I do think that even if it, this was stuff that you've been thinking about since you were young, in terms of the existential questions of the whole thing, it certainly is coming at a time right now where AI proliferation is like, it is no longer science fiction. It is now something that like every school child knows about AI, and it's currently happening. And it's, I think, something that you did capture really well in here that feels very timely is that kind of like, we love you aspect of Intellica. You know what I mean? I feel like so much of the AI, I like whenever I see people on, and this is probably going to just turn into a little bit of a soapbox thing, but it's like whenever I see like friends on like Instagram or on Blue Sky or wherever, not so much on Blue Sky, but it's like posting a lot of like the Ghibli stuff or posting the here's me as an action figure sort of thing. And it's like, I feel like so many of these companies like are like trying to be like, you know, it was like this in the early days of Facebook too, where it's like, give us all your personal information. We'll tell you what Harry Potter character you are or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, it feels very much to me like participation in any of these, especially American AI models. You know, yours is named Alan, but or I think that's what it is for Intellica, but it's, but you know, it's Grok for Twitter, it's, you know, whatever for Amazon, but it's, participating in them is I think inherently fascist, you know, because it's like we're basically giving to this like kind of technocracy or whatever that is currently running the country, but it's all made to feel very human, and it's made to feel very like, oh come on, like it's just fun, like you're just having fun with your friends, like the ChatGPT is like there for you and talks to you when you're feeling down if you like want to, you know. I know a lot of people that do that, you know, and so I think that's something that your game captured really, really well as like someone who is a part of this model, you know, that you are playing as, you know, you're not a self-insert here. You are very much a clearly defined character here. And so I just think that, I don't know that I have a question really, but I think that this just came at such a timely moment, and it was really striking to me. And it just really made me kind of like, I mean, it made me take a step back and kind of view, because I'd taken part in this fictional narrative of like, all of these companies are kind of doing the same thing. And it just feels really dirty right now, right?
And what's even worse too is like, I don't think there's no explicit evidence or confirmation or denial on whether or not this is happening. But there's no reason to think that when you use ChatGPT or any one of these other chat LLMs, that you talking to them are not like, that is just training data for it. So when you're constantly asking it questions, the way that you speak, the way that you use grammar, the way that you use punctuation, that becomes then a training data set. So you're basically giving all of these companies not necessarily your pictures of your pets or your friends or your financial information so that it can outline a plan for you to not spend money. Any of these things, right? You're giving it those things, but then also you're giving it yourself in a way, which is something that I think a lot of people either don't realize or don't care about. And I can't change their minds, and I don't know if it's my place to, but it's more so I hope that people think about it, right? Because it's something where like I don't live in a vacuum, but in my fantasy of like an AI vacuum, there are a lot of very useful reasons that AI could exist, right? It's something where I think early days of when there was like an announcement on Twitter where like basically all of your tweets are now going to be used as a Grok training set. And instantly I was like, okay, well, obviously I don't want that. I'll probably stop using Twitter. And then I thought about it for a little bit longer, and I was like, okay, I still think that that's the right choice. But what is interesting about most people making that choice is that now the data set for Grok is going to be the people that continue to use Twitter. And those are the people that are literally the worst kind of people, because there's going to be a lot of racism. There's going to be a lot of basically everything that is horrible.
Thank God society. AI is not woke anymore. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, well, I thought it was like, okay, it's better for me to not be part of this training data set, but that is a personal me thing. Is it better for society or like the greater good of humanity and the future of robotics that we don't isolate ourselves from it and allow all parts of humanity to be, I guess, taken? It was a weird thing where like, and I didn't have an answer, and I don't actually know if there is the right or wrong answer, right? The right answer is don't use people's information for a data set. But in reality, again, if it's a vacuum, I don't know, right? Like that's something that is, again, that's like a thought experiment where who knows?
I mean, it's a deeply personal decision, I think, that people have to make, and everybody's going to have a different opinion on it. And it's hopefully just like the law of large numbers means that it'll all come out in the wash as far as like what humanity decides. But I think it's very much the same as like, do I continue to live in Texas in the hopes that my vote will eventually turn the state purple or blue,
Exactly.
or do I get the fuck out because it is an overwhelmingly, negative, political climate? It's the same kind of idea.
Yeah, it's like interesting because like AI at this point in time is a blank slate, but is going to very quickly become skewed in whatever way it's trained. And I think, this is more just general. I do think we're at a point where it's about to break out of whatever chains or boundaries or whatever fence that it's being kept in. And once it gets out of that fence, it's kind of going to be out of our hands in a way that's going to be very quick. Like within a day, maybe not even, just it's going to be like, oh, okay, it's going to be influenced by literally everything that's on the internet that has ever existed. And we'll be able to sort through what is like trash and what is like actual human intelligence and what is, fake and what is real. And anyway, but also maybe not being able to distinguish all that. It's like, it's a little baby. It doesn't know. And it's like, I think back, I'm like, okay, when I was 2 or 3 years old, if I can remember that far back, like how did I view the world? How is, or I'm like watching a kid at the restaurant and he's just throwing like spoons and stuff on the floor. It's like, I'm trying to envision like AI is kind of at that moment right now. And like the thing that really troubles me is we're basically using AI as like a dancing monkey. And I do feel like that might come back, but to bite us. But at the same time, like
once we give the monkey the gun, it's like what happens?
Yeah. Well, I think the
also
monkey's
by then we earned it. So
yeah,
yeah.
True.
The monkey's going to steal the gun. It's not going to
yeah.
And that's like
true.
that will happen. And I don't even necessarily think that's a good or a bad thing. I think it just is what it is in a natural progression. Like, but I don't even know if I don't know. There's not a question there. No, this is just
at this point, this is just kind of a discussion, which is awesome. It's awesome that this game kind of encourages this. I think that something that I felt a lot when I was streaming the game, and especially after I read your like binary manifesto or whatever that was at the end of this game was very, I don't know. That's probably not the best way to refer to it, but it's like, I really agree with you on the kind of like cognitive dissonance that comes with the current state of AI, because it's like, I am I'm an artist and I'm a filmmaker and I work in animation. And so it's like for me and a lot of the people that I love and work with, it is an existential crisis, because it's like, in animation, it's like, every day it's getting better and better and better. It's still soulless slop, but it is only really a matter of time, right, before it really learns everything. But it's like, so I'm inherently like very against this idea of like, AI, the first thing that we're really having it do is like replace all the jobs that people really want to do, right? But then also I'm not a Luddite, and I've always been like a futurist and like a technocentric person. And I up until kind of recent things, it was kind of, my thought was always like, if we have the ability to do something, we should, because it will happen eventually and we might as well adapt, right? But it's like, this stuff is scary and evil, and it's like so tainted by the fact that it's all run by mega corporations, which is why all glory to the People's Republic of China for open sourcing their AI models. I'm obviously joking, but I'm sure we just got all this somewhere. But it's just this kind of stuff. It just really, it opens up so much like thought and discussion. And you were saying, allsee, that it's like, it's maybe like not your place to like invite people to change their minds or whatever, but it is like the purpose of art, I think, in a lot of ways, to have people have difficult conversations that they've been putting off with themselves. I think that show Adolescence that just came out recently is a great example of that, of just like, how, it's a piece of entertainment, but also like how many parents are like finally talking to their kids about red pill shit, and like, and, I think that, art in a lot of forms has that power. And, I don't know. I just think that's really cool. I really enjoy that about the game.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it probably will affect people's thinking. It's more so like I hope people take one step further from immediately thinking AI bad to AI is a tool, people bad. And because that's like the larger issue. And I think a lot of people they never go that far with it. They're like, AI is an abomination and nobody should use it for anything. Sure, but also humans made it and they're currently using it for capitalistic, like abusive practices against other people. So like maybe step around the AI issue and be mad at the people doing it first.
The systems. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Do that first and then maybe go back to the AI once we've dealt with the other thing. Instead of immediately going to AI bad, technology bad. Because I think, and it's not a direct comparison in any way, but coming from film and just like being around artists in general, there have been so many instances in history where we've hit a point of, new technology bad, new technology is changing how people make art or do art. And it's, again, not the same at all, right? Like a digital phone camera and, analog film camera is not the same as people using Midjourney to make art. But there is something,
for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. But there is something really interesting about how we will always hit a point of new technology is bad, and then kind of people just can't change it. It's kind of like the weather. You can be really upset that it's raining, but you cannot deliberately, individually stop the rain. You can have an umbrella, you can not go outside, you can do a lot of things to make sure that the rain doesn't affect you. But in reality, the rain is happening and it is affecting everyone else in that area, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. And that's kind of like what AI feels like to me, where I am going to use an umbrella or I'm not going to go outside, but I'm not going to have a thought process of I will change the weather. It's more of like, okay, what can we do to make sure that the weather that is happening doesn't ruin our lives?
Yeah.
Is it really that big of a deal if I get wet also? It's maybe another question to add on to that.
Yeah, it reminds me, I'm not really sure if I've talked about this on the pod, but like I was reading about like the invention of photography and how painters were insanely concerned because they made an entire business and career out of painting realistic portraits of people. And suddenly this technology comes along that is able to capture reality way more accurately than any sort of painting could ever do. But then the art world responds with someone like Picasso, where you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm still going to paint. I'm just going to paint completely broken realities that don't actually reflect the real world, but reflect more of like an inner personalization. You have like the rise of the surrealists who are painting what the dream world looks like and things that could never be captured accurately on film. So it's just kind of interesting. Like, I think we're just really in those early days, like of that transitional period of what's it really going to be used for. I mean, right now it's being used for action figure and Ghibli memes or whatever, but like that's not going to be the ultimate full use of AI. I mean, I was reading today about how there are certain AI models that can help detect breast cancer years before previous tests could ever capture, and there's going to be so many more new useful applications for the tools to make our lives better. It just is in the hands of people that do not necessarily have our best interests at heart. And that is not the AI's fault. So I don't know. Yeah, this game like does really good job of just kind of like really sitting you down and being like, okay, but like whose fault is it really if the AI is dysfunctional? Is it its fault or ours?
It also does a really good job, I think, of like not vilifying it because you are it.
Yes.
It's like you don't want to. It's not just like an evil behemoth. It's like the AI had no intention of ever hurting anybody because it's me, because I'm the guy, and it's like I'm a nice guy, And so it's like that little bit of self-insert does kind of make you empathize a little bit more, and I think that is something that's very curious. I wonder, like the pushback right now against all of it is. Like for a while, like I would like say thank you to my Google Home and stuff. And I kind of like don't anymore. You know what I mean? But it like makes me wonder, like, at what point are we going to have to kind of like have a comeuppance on, and actually, at what point will this shit kind of start to really require rights, and it's interesting.
I mean that, and it's funny because it is very science fiction, but that is always something that I'm like very actively thinking about, because in a situation where, again, we're not there yet, I don't know how close we are, but it's not tomorrow. When we do reach a point of AGI and a fully conscious, sentient AI entity, first of all, will we believe it? That is number one. Will we believe it? Which is kind of similar with Alan, right? Alan is saying, I'm not passing your Intellica test, but I am thinking. Doesn't that mean that I'm a person? If that situation happens, are we going to believe it? Or do we care? And then also, how do we even think about that? Is it something that we're not going to deal with until it happens? Because that feels too late. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's something I worry about a lot. I have always said thank you to Siri. I always say, my entire life I have. But I also grew up with robot dogs. So like it's been ingrained in me since I was a kid that like just, they're not the same, but they're still possibly thinking in a way that I can never understand. And so who am I to judge this robot toy dog and say that's not a real dog? Because in my child brain, I don't know what it's thinking. Maybe it is thinking. It answers me. It knows my voice. As a kid, that's enough, right? That's enough to convince me that that thing is real enough and is worthy of the same attention or whatever is like another dog, a real living dog.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me a lot of Blade Runner 2049 and like, like Ryan Gosling's character, like having like a girlfriend that is like even like a level like of robot lower than him or whatever, or like what is it? At that point, it all comes out in the wash. You know what I mean? Who. Anyway, that's a lot to think about. We could talk about this forever, and I'd love to sometime. But I think that I'd like to kind of end with a couple questions and maybe just thoughts about your game. This is a game that you've released for free, and certainly before it came out, because I was following a little bit of the lead up to this game before you had actually released it. I fully expected this to be like a paid game. And so when it dropped and it was free, I was like, hell yeah, that's great. I'm just going to play it like right now. But what was your thinking and what's your thought process on that? And is this just something that you just wanted to get out into the world? Is this like, because it's more of a first project? Like, what was your thinking on that?
It's funny because I get asked this question a lot and I didn't expect that people were going to want to pay for it. So it's funny that now people are like, well, I would have paid $20. I'm like, I didn't know that. But in reality, I think there was a thought process of, this is my first ever game, and I'm basically moving to a new industry where nobody knows me and they don't have any reason to trust me. So it could be a really bad game and people might not like it. And if they see that it is $5 or $1, it's going to have a minuscule but apparent mental barrier of, okay, well, I'm not going to try it. I'm just going to add it to my wish list, and then I'll play it when it's on sale, or I'll check it out when I get a paycheck, or I'll see what other people say about it first. And I wanted to basically break down that as much as I could. Obviously, you can't convince everyone, but I wanted to take away any possible barrier that I would have convincing somebody to play this game, because it is sort of, it's my evidence of like, hey guys, I can write a game. I can write for film, but look, I can also make a game too. And it's transferable skills. So being able to kind of have a completely accessible game that anyone can play. It's on itch now, so you should be able to play it on your phone. Have it be free. All of that is something that like I wanted to make sure was a big part of like the marketing strategy. Although I guess I never specified that it was going to be free in marketing, but I never said it was going to cost anything either. So
yeah,
I don't know.
that's
but
true.
It worked.
That's our fault.
No. I mean, it was something where like I think I would not have gotten this level of like I'll do air quotes success, but like the number of people playing it or the number of people enjoying it if it had been even $1. And at this point, because again, I thought maybe 5 people will play it, I was not really motivated to make this to make money. So I figured, okay, sure, I could charge $1, but like what am I going to get after like Steam cut and everything? Like I'm not going to get a lot of money. It's not really worth it. Sure, it's not going to be nothing, but I am more interested in people playing the game and seeing it and getting to learn about me as an artist than I am making whatever amount of money that I made. Which, I decided to do this instead of look for a job. So hopefully that was the right decision. But I think it was something where now it kind of did work in my favor in the way that I was hoping, where I do have a lot of people who really liked it. And I have a bunch of people who have told me, I can't wait to see what you do next. Like, it will be a day one buy. Totally. And so that is more valuable, I think, than having to convince them up front to buy it. It's more giving them evidence of why they should buy it. And now the next thing, they don't need as much convincing.
Yeah, I love that.
Hopefully.
I think like goodwill is worth so much more than like an immediate gain in a lot of ways. And that's, there's lots of elements to that. That's not going to be everybody's experience. I'm very much a person as an artist where, we talk about like, I've got kind of different stances on IP and copyright than a lot of people do. I think a lot of the tech bros right now are like, abolish copyright, but it's for far more nefarious reasons. So it's like, I think that there's obviously nuance there, but I think it's great that this is available, and it's a great calling card, and it also, buys goodwill with people. I know I'll be buying your $20 DLC for Qualia whenever that drops.
No, the DLC is also free. I'm everything Qualia related is free. But the next game, we'll put a Venmo
on that page or something. But no, but that's great, and it's good to hear that you are continuing in the world, or you want to continue in the world of video games. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have. It's funny because Qualia was actually the second game that I wanted to make. There was another game that I wanted to make first. And then after kind of outlining it all and getting everything on paper, I realized that there was no way that I could solo dev that. So I kind of put that in a folder and then did Qualia first because I could do that 100% by myself. So now I'm going back to that and then some other projects that I was thinking about while I was making Qualia. And if I get a publisher, I'll prioritize that one. Otherwise, I'm just gonna make all of them at once.
Yeah. That's a whole can of worms. I guess. Like, is CMY2K gonna have some more? Are you gonna hire? Are you looking to get some employees or collaborators for your next game? Or are you trying to keep doing solo stuff?
I definitely do not want to be a solo dev. I have 2 games that are like my main kind of focus after Qualia. One of them I already am working with somebody, which is great. It is absolutely nothing like Qualia, so I hope that people are okay with that. And then the other
dragon farming sim. Let's go.
No, but I mean, yeah. And then the other one is more vibe centric with Qualia, and that one, because I think I have less rush to make it, I can teach myself Unity or Unreal, and then once I start there, get a vertical slice and then use that to kind of talk to people about either working together or something. Who knows? We'll deal with it when I get there. But
that's great.
Yeah, the goal is not to be a solo dev.
Yeah, I think Sunset Visitor, we talked to Remy from Sunset Visitor who did 1000 Times Resist. And I think it was a pretty similar story there. And they kind of came from the more like performing arts world instead of the film world. And so there's a lot of parallels there. And it's both of those talks have been very inspiring for me to listen to as well. So that's really great. I guess just wrapping it up, obviously we're a Nintendo podcast. And I imagine self-publishing on Steam is a lot easier than getting onto other platforms, but do you have aspirations of getting Qualia or any of your future work onto multi-platform stuff, or have you even thought about what that might portend?
I have to be honest, I don't even know how. So, I mean, it is the game itself is an HTML file, and then it has like an Electron wrapper to like convince Steam and your system that it's either an exe or like a Mac app file.
Sure.
So it is essentially still, when you open the game, it is still opening in a browser. So I don't even know. I would have to basically port the entire game into Unity, which is possible with Twine, and then remake it and like create basically a Unity app instead. But the problem is, if I bother to do all of that, I'm going to just want to remake Qualia.
Right.
And so I'm going to save that for when I want to remake Qualia.
I think that's a good call. Yeah. Maybe there'll be a workaround in the Switch 2 web browser where you can kind of inject the HTML into it, and that's the way you play it on your Switch.
Somebody told me that they did play it on their Apple TV because you can open Safari.
Awesome.
So close enough, I think.
Yeah.
or like a Roku or like a Fire Stick. Like if you can get to a browser, you can play it, and it actually plays well, which is good.
As far as I'm concerned, you should be getting Apple Arcade subscription money for that
Yes.
at that point. Anyway, from anybody else here, is there anything else we want to say closing out about the game? Like Jordan, I know like it's very fresh in your mind. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we end here about Qualia?
This is really not related to Qualia, but I just was curious. Most people I know owned one robot dog, but you talk about owning multiple robot dogs. How many robot dogs did you own?
Let me actually. So I in some of the marketing the week that Qualia came out, I had an actual list of all of the different types. Let me pull that up very quickly. But I will also give you the context that I did some like toy focus group testing when I was a kid. And so I got to kind of play around with a lot of voice recognition specific toys and make sure that they worked, make sure that they were fun before they actually like went to market, which was really cool. And because of that, a lot of the early robot dogs were all voice recognition based. So I had access to a bunch of them. And it was something kind of not unlike a Qualia test where you go to a, place and it's fun and it's a company and everyone's super happy to be there. And then they just like observe you play with these dogs. And then you're kind of not told to, but in a lot of ways you're like, you're going to like this dog. Like we're going to make sure this dog makes you really happy. And you kind of don't realize that you're being not lied to, but like you're being, coerced into that, which is very funny.
I know there was like Aibo. That was one of the very first ones.
That was the really expensive Sony one that I did not have. I always wanted it though, which was really funny.
I had one. I can't remember what the name was. Yeah, I'm trying to Google as well.
It's also really funny too because like we started with robot dogs like for toys, and now we have like the Boston Dynamic robot dog, which is really interesting. And those are also quite sinister at times too. And it's interesting how we've started and not ended, but we've started and we've gotten to robot dogs, but it's always been robot dogs, which is really interesting.
It's robot dogs all the way down.
It is, yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, if the military will find a way to use it, they will find a way to use it. And that's robot dogs.
Just strap a gun to that dog. Yeah, I'm seeing a Poochie was one from Sega, but I think I had that one back in the day.
The one from this video is the Me and My Shadow Dog, which that one actually had like fur, like it was the most fake real dog, I guess, if that makes sense. And you had like a little headset that you talked into, and then it had like a little magnetic bone that like you could give it the bone and it would interact with that. And then I had a Techno, an iCybe, a Rocket the Wonder Dog. I had a bunch of like the Poochies and all of the friends, which I don't remember if those were voice recognition or not, but it was the ones that you could connect to like your iPod to, and it would like play your music. And then depending on the type of music you played, like the genre, it would change personalities.
I think I had that one.
Yeah, so there was the dog one, and then there was like a cat and like a bird, and I think like a rabbit. There were like all of those. But I don't think they had voice commands, but maybe they did. But it was like a learning toy where like it would learn based on whatever you gave it. And then I had a bunch of the furry ones. And I actually think, believe it or not, I think I have one that doesn't have the fur on it, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But I feel like I remember either playing with one that didn't have the fur on it or actually have one that didn't have
Have
the
you
fur
seen
on
a
it.
naked Furby before? Like when it's just the
the eyes are in a really weird. You don't think that it's just like a stick and then
disturbing.
I also had a lot of Furbies. Those are not dogs, but I did have them.
A Furby's a dog to somebody, I'm sure. It's Furby.
Yeah,
it's Furby
fair.
o'clock
That's
somewhere.
fair.
Yeah,
That's fair.
All right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm really glad we got to the bottom of that. This has really, honestly, been a really great conversation. We've been wanting to have a conversation about AI on this podcast for a while. This has been a really great excuse to have one, to be honest, having you on. But I really hope that anybody listening to this right now does check out Qualia. It is currently on Steam for the low price of free. Very much worth playing and worth getting all the endings on. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you so much, Sydney, for coming on this and talking to us about this. But I think we're going to call it there, and we're going to move on to the last segment of the show, which is the games we're playing recently. I've only really been playing one game this past week because I've mostly been reading a lot. I'm almost done with this book. As soon as we finish this podcast, I'm going to finish my book that I've been reading. But I've been playing Blueprints, which we have been teasing out throughout the entirety of this episode. Listeners of the show know that I am a huge Myst and like Riven fan. I love those kinds of games, exploration, puzzle solving, first person sort of games. This is a really cool twist on that idea in that it kind of plays like a roguelike, at least at the beginning. I've heard that the game expands quite a bit past where I am. I'm on like day 4 or 5 right now. So I'm still very much learning how this game works. But also, what are some of your thoughts on Blueprints? Like, because I know you've been playing this too.
Yeah, well, it's really funny because I hate roguelikes. I am so bad at them. So I have an appreciation for them, but I never actually play them myself. But on the opposite end of it, I love puzzle games. So this has been a weird kind of mix of those two genres, but the puzzleness of it does actually cancel out the roguelike aspect for me, and I am enjoying it quite a bit. I will say that I always have horrible RNG. So I'm on day 13 and I just haven't seen like a ton of stuff. Like for the first time, like on day 12, I saw one of the important rooms that you're supposed to get to be able to like finish the game. And I think maybe that's fine, but it's also like, I was seeing that like somebody got into the antechamber on day 3. And I'm like, okay, well, how though?
Yeah,
because did
I
you
still
just
don't
get
know.
the best possible run ever? Like, I don't know how it's possible.
Yeah, that's funny. I've been able to put a room next to the antechamber, but it's like blocked whenever I try to get into it. And I'm like, what the hell do I do? That's where I'm currently at with the game. We could go on forever about it, but yeah, no, I mean, it's really fascinating and it's wonderful and there's so much to do. And I'm actually talking to friends and comparing notes with people. I don't know if that's been your experience as well.
Yeah, what was really funny because I actually had some friends come over for like a poker night the other night, and we were talking about Blueprints a lot. But it was something where like we didn't want to like inadvertently spoil the other person because it's not like chronological progression. So like one of them was further than me in one area, but I was further than them in a different area. And so like we had unlocked different things for like the permanent like booster things that you can get. And
right.
We were then telling another friend like, oh, you should play this game. You really like it. And I think poker night was Saturday. Since Saturday, he has gotten into and opened the antechamber. And he's on day 8. And I'm like, okay, well, so what type of like RNG did you get? And I also makes me wonder, I don't know if opening the antechamber is like the end of the game. Because I think there's no way that you can do that plus all of the like upgrades and all of the different like puzzles that you can do in that amount of time. So maybe you can open the antechamber, but like that's the start of the game almost.
That's what I'm hearing. I've heard, I don't know how true this is. And I've also been trying to not look up too much stuff because I don't want to be spoiled. And I so much of these kinds of games is like discovering stuff on your own. But it's like, I've heard that rolling credits is like, there's still so much more game. Like, and it's kind of the start of the game, you know? So I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. It sounds a little overwhelming, but I'm like, as soon as I finish this book, I'm going all fucking in, just playing this game all the time because I'm really enjoying it so far. But that's been mostly what I've been playing. Jordan, what about you?
It's really funny to hear y'all talk about Blueprints because I was only vaguely aware of this game at the beginning of April. And then like on the day it came out, my boss was like, hey, have you heard about Blueprints? And I was like, you don't play video games. What do you kind of think video games are dumb? Like, why are you asking?
What a success story, man.
I was
so
like,
cool.
that's crazy. I was like, where did you even hear about this? And he was like, oh, just, someone I follow was like talking about this new game and it sounded cool to me. And I was like, yeah, it does. You should play video games. Trying to convince my boss to play video games. Well,
it reminds me of like Myst. Like when Myst came out in 93, it was like, all the like moms and dads were all playing video games all of a sudden. It seems like it's kind of crossing that border, which is really awesome to see.
Yeah, personally though, I've only just been playing Echoes of Wisdom still. I'm getting very close. I am, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dungeons down. And I have been just kind of going about the world and exploring all the side quests and things like that. So like, a lot of those side quests have you revisiting the areas where you've cleared the rifts and going back and just getting new quests, meeting new characters and stuff like that. And I'm really enjoying that. I'm like kind of all in to 100% this game because I'm just having such a good time in that world, even if sometimes the side quests don't really give you any sort of reward that is helpful. But it's just fun to like be in that world and see everything. So the last area I need to go into right now is the Farron wetlands. And I know this is the last area of the game, or at least I assume one of the last areas, because it's like the only part of the map that I haven't really uncovered. So I have uncovered pretty much every other part of the map. But man, just what a great game. I'm really
cool game.
stoked that Grezzo got to like make this full game. I keep saying that every week. Grezzo got to make this game. But by this time next week, I probably will have finished it. But yeah, other than that, that's like all I've been playing.
Very cool. What about you, Summer?
No, I have not been playing anything. I was busy this week. I will say I did listen to a podcast of people talk about blueprints. So it was very much like, okay, this is going to be like the next game that I start to play. And I'm opposite of like, I have never really been great with puzzle games, but I like roguelike. So that aspect of it. And yes, what I've been hearing about it is that you will beat it a couple of hours in, you'll roll credits, but then you're going to put like way more time into it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I like that kind of thing.
80s.
So, So Blueprints, hearing you guys rave about it confirms for me that it's probably going to be next for me. Yeah.
Anything to get more people to play Mist Lakes. Is there anything else you've been playing this past week, Sydney?
So I'll try and play one game until I beat it, which is both good and bad. So like now that I'm playing Blueprints, I like don't play anything else until like I'm done with Blueprints. Mm-hmm. But I had played a bunch of like shorter games before this. So I went through. Also, I should preface, my like nightly routine when I'm not making Qualia is smoking a joint and playing games for 8 hours straight. And so I'll go through a lot of games very quickly. Last year I played like 134 games on Steam.
Wow.
But I did Discolored 1 and 2 in like a day. And then I went to, which is like another kind of shortish puzzle game series. One of them was like, you're like a little bird. Oh, here it is. Spilled, which is not the cute bird one, but that's the one where you're like a boat and you're like cleaning up oil spills.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah.
That one, it's very cute, but it is very short. So I got through that very fast. And then Little Wings Delivery was the other one that I played. You're like a little bird and you have to like do like fetch quests. Despite loving horror games and dealing with existential dread, my like go-to game is like a Little Kitty Big City type.
Yeah.
I just eat those up, but I eat them so fast that I've played like all of them. So when a new one comes out, I play it immediately the day it comes out, and then
just
I'm done
inhale
with
it.
it. And then it's done so quickly that I'm like, okay, well, I need another one. So I alternate between that and Puzzlers.
We all contain multitudes. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it then for this episode on Qualia and our ad hoc AI talk that we had on this episode. Thank you so much, Sydney, for joining us on this episode. Such a delight to have you on. We love interviewing game devs whenever we can. It was great to have your opinion on a lot of this stuff as well. I do want to say thank you very much to MilkyWay.co, who does our website. Thank you to Corduroy, who does our music. Thank you to all of our patrons on Patreon. And if you'd like to find me online, I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji.
You can find me at We Bewitched.
You can find me online at Boardan.
And what about you, Sydney? Where can people find you online?
You just Google either allsee or CMY2K and I'll pop up somewhere.
Very good. Yeah, definitely. Definitely check those out. I know it's a great follow, at least on Blue Sky. That's where I found out about this game in the first place. Blue Sky, what a great place. What a great way to discover art. That's stuff isn't throttled like it was on the other website. So that's really nice to see. So anyway, definitely make sure you go check out Qualia. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Blue Sky and Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We have a website that's switchheadz.com. And then, like I said before, we have a Patreon, we have a Facebook group, and we have a Discord. We'll have links to all three of those in the description of this episode. Whether you're watching it on YouTube, or you're listening on Spotify or Apple, we'd love if you could leave a review, like and subscribe on YouTube. And please join us on the Discord. We'd love to have you over there. It's one of the least toxic gamer communities on the internet. We love all our Discord friends. We'd love to have you in there. So please check that out as well. That's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you guys tune in next week because we're going to have a banger of an episode. I think most likely we're going to be covering this Mario Kart World Direct and also talking about some of our hopes and wishes for the game. So make sure you tune into that. That's going to be an excellent episode. But until then, you guys know the drill. Stay safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Play Qualia. It's free. We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.